Hello and welcome to the big picture. The US Secretary of State John Kerry's visit, the first high-level one after the new government took over 2 months back, had been watched very keenly. The visit, coming as it did when the relations between the two countries was at a relative low, was expected to reboot the relationship and take it to a new level. The visit, which witnessed the Indo-US strategic dialogue between Kerry and Indian Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj, also laid the foundation for the visit of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to United States in September. Has the visit resulted in removing some of the obstacles which has been dogging the relations for some time now? Has the expectation of the two governments to use this visit to take the relations to the next level been achieved? We will discuss the outcome of the Kerry's visit and where the relations between the two countries are heading. To discuss this, I have with me Siddharth Varadarajan, senior journalist and a senior fellow at the Center for Public Affairs and Critical Theory at the Shiv Nadar University, Prof. Chintamani Mahapatra, Chairman, Center for Canadian, US and Latin American Studies at the JNU, R.S. Kalha, former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs, Rajiv, Kumar, Senior Fellow, will be joining us very soon. And on the phone line from Washington, D.C. is Chidanand, Rajghatta, Foreign Editor and US Correspondent for the Times of India. Welcome to all of you. Siddharth, I would like to come to you first. We all acknowledge and accept the fact that there had been a lot of stumbling blocks in the relationship. There were certain problems in the relations between the two countries in the last 1 year or so, if not more. Do you think any of those obstacles have been removed after this visit of Mr. Kerry?
Clearly not. The issues which divided India and the US over the last 2 years are really, there are a complex number of issues that have to do with unrealistic American expectations from the Indian side. They have to do about the changing nature of global crises, so that the South Asian region, in a sense, has receded somewhat from Washington's set of priorities. So there are a number of factors that that operate, and the latest irritant, of course, India's decision to block a consensus on the trade facilitation agreement at the WTO because of our concerns over our Food Security Act. So these are all outstanding issues, and none of them have been resolved. Of course, what Mr. Kerry's visit has done is to, in a sense, establish high-level contact between the US and Indian governments. This is crucial also because Narendra Modi, as Prime Minister, is a person that the US felt they had to reach out to, given their visa policy for the last decade. So this establishment of contact, establishment of bonhomie, despite contentious issues remaining unresolved, will presumably set the stage for fairly intense consultations over the next month and a half leading up to Prime Minister Modi's visit to Washington, where perhaps one or two of these issues might be might be set aside or progress might be possible. But as of now, we really are at a stage where all outstanding issues remain exactly where they were on the table.
Do you think there was any bonhomie in the visit? Could you decipher any bonhomie? Was there such bonhomie visible in the body language of the two leaders yesterday when they held the press conference?
I would say that the press conference it had all the elements of spontaneity and warmth that you would expect of contact between principals at that level and of countries that are strategic partners. But it's not as if the press conference revealed anything. In fact, Madam Sushma Swaraj, for the first time as an Indian, for the first time, publicly, for an Indian official, went public in the presence of an American leader, stating India's reservations or opposition to the entire snooping that the
Absolutely.
So yes, these are all negatives, but the very fact that they were flagged, the fact that two partners spoke about their problems in public and did so candidly, I think suggests a certain level of confidence, a certain level of comfort in a relationship. So I would say that the stage has been set, but that doesn't mean that resolving these issues is going to be easy. They have evaded easy resolution for the last 2 years,
right,
and there's no reason to imagine whether on nuclear liability or on other issues,
right,
India and the US are in a position to cross the hurdles that they have.
Okay. Mr. Kalha, Mr. Kalha, some of the problems
Yes.
which were seen as obstacles in the relationship between India and United States in the last couple of years, if not in the last year, if not more than that. One was, the recent one was about the UNHRC vote as far as Israel was concerned, and then the Modi's visa issue itself, and then the NSA spying of the BJP leaders and all these things. Do you think that any of these issues have been reasonably settled between the two governments after this visit?
First of all, I think it's important to remember that this is the first high-level contact between the Obama administration and the new government of Prime Minister Modi. Secondly, one must also remember that there are a host of issues which affect the relationship between the two countries.
Right.
But before I mention any of these issues which affect the relationship, I would like to emphasize that the relationship between India and the United States, or maintaining good relations between the two countries, is an absolute fundamental aspect if you want to have a successful foreign policy.
Right.
Let's not forget that the US is a global superpower. It is an economic superpower, it's a military superpower, and it has a political reach which touches almost all corners of the world. So therefore, if India and the United States are to have a strategic relationship, if they are going to have a sound economic relationship, then it's absolutely essential that work be done to repair the, what should I say, perhaps damage is too strong a word, but perhaps the neglect over the last 1.5 years. It is very good that this aspect has been handled at a higher level, in the fact that Secretary of State Kerry has visited India, and Prime Minister Modi is going to visit United States in September. But do remember that this is work in progress. To expect that all these issues will be solved in one meeting or perhaps in 1.5 meetings is expecting too much. But the important point is that both countries should be interested in seeking solutions and not in vitiating the atmosphere and creating further fissures. But also do remember that very soon all American troops are going to be withdrawn from Afghanistan. That's another issue which I think importance must be paid, because so far we have been concentrating on other issues and we have not been touching on this aspect. Secondly, do also remember that China has adopted fairly aggressive what we call policies in East Asia.
Right.
And since the bulk of our trade passes through the Malacca Straits and across the Pacific to Japan, China and to South Korea, we have to be careful about what is happening in that part of the world too. And that is, I think, to my mind, are the important factors should go into the relationship between India and the United States.
Okay, I think you've set some kind of an agenda of what should be done, what has been done in the last 2-3 days that he was here. We'll come back to you, Mr. Kalha. Chidanand, Chidanand, are you there?
Yeah. Yes, I just joined you.
Okay,
Hi, Girish.
Chidu, my question is that what was the expectations of the in the US when Kerry left US to come to India? What were those expectations which they thought that he would be able to accomplish here? And you think that in these last 2 days, what kind of reaction do you see there back in the US, about this visit?
Well, to be honest, India hadn't been on the U.S. radar when Kerry sort of set out there. There's been so much coverage of the Middle East and events in Israel and Palestine that tended to overshadow, or there was the overhang of that even as Kerry headed out to Delhi. But within the sort of community which covers South Asia and the Indian subcontinent, there was a general sense that he was going on a mission to sort of heal the sort of damage that was caused in the previous months with both the visa episode involving Chief Minister Modi, then Chief Minister Modi, and also the Cobra Gade episode. So it was sort of bridge building and getting to know the new setup in New Delhi. You remember that although the administration here has had good relations with BJP. Most of it was with the old guard, all of whom, are either sidelined or in retirement. Former Prime Minister Vajpayee, Home Minister Advani, Foreign Minister Jaswant Singh. This is an entirely new setup and new dispensation. So it was getting to know them. So the expectations were fairly tempered. The one thing, of course, in the community which covers, trade and commerce was, again, the overhang of the whole WTO gridlock, and everyone was hoping that Kerry would be able to sort of talk, the Indian government into being into a more reasonable position, reasonable in American terms. Doesn't seem to have happened, and this is where, I've always said that U.S. and India, much as we like to believe that this is a wonderful relationship, full of bonhomie and good feelings, we'll always have these problems. It is not going to end now. It will not end forever, because these are two very sort of lively democracies with a free, vibrant press, electoral politics, constituent pressure. Each side trying to guard its turf and its people. So it will always be, slightly prickly. There will be negotiations, compromises, sort of talk of sellout. And this is what we have to learn to live with now and forever.
Okay. Mr. Rajiv Kumar, it was very interesting that yesterday there was this joint press conference between Mr. Kerry and with Mr. Kerry and Sushma Swaraj, and there were questions asked about the WTO, what will happen there. He was hoping that something could be worked out. Yesterday night, as they were talking, the meetings were still going on. At the end of the day, it all collapsed, and India vetoed and things like that. You think that this is one thing which can have a major effect on the relations between U.S. and India? The whole. Do you think that the whole visit of Kerry what happened in Geneva can have a major impact on that?
No, I don't think so at all. Because I think, between the oldest democracy in the world and the largest democracy in the world, the two administrations very clearly understand that domestic pressures, domestic factors, domestic concerns matter a lot. And I'm sure the US administration realizes that a new government in India could not have opened itself to a sort of flank attack on selling the interests of the farmers, etc., especially under external pressure. And I think to that extent, and also the fact, please recognize that the US in some sense has been neglectful of the WTO for a while, and therefore has launched the TTP and the transatlantic, trade negotiations, so on. So I am not sure. I don't think that the Kerry visit or the coming visit of Mr. Modi to the US in September is going to get derailed by this. What it is going to get derailed by is the fact that India-US relationship, which should be based on a flowering of our business-to-business relationship, had never let that happen. If you look at our economic relationship, it is tiny, compared to what it could be. And I think, given that the US and India both, whether we admit it or not, are private sector-driven economies, that is the relationship which needs to be given much more. Much more sort of strength.
Right. You think Mr. Kerry's visit has in any way taken this relationship forward as far as the business relationship between the two countries are concerned? In the last 2 days, you think he has done anything, or we have done something which could take this forward?
I think somebody said that this was a visit to rectify the past rather than and build the basis for going forward. I don't see anything in the statements, in the joint statements, which will tell me that any of those issues that were on the table have been resolved. I didn't expect them to be resolved, but the fact is that the India.
What do you think? What was the major issue there? If you have to name 2, 3, 4 issues which needs to be resolved in the coming days, months, what are those issues?
You see, the two sides have their own separate issues. On the US side, of course, there's the issue of intellectual property rights,
right.
Which has really triggered a huge backlash against India by the US business. That is the first one. The second one would also be access to our own market, and our agriculture market, where our tariffs remain very high. And I think the third would be the fact that they would not be happy, and I'm also not, by this 49% FDI in defense, because they would want much higher, because they, their manufacturers would not be willing to give in their frontline technologies. On our side, the issues was clearly on the visa. That there is this pending bill,
immigration bill,
the pending bill that will limit companies from hiring above 50% of their workforce, from foreigners. So that is the one big issue. The second issue, as far as I can make out, will be on the US, the freedom for using dual use technologies, because they still are licensed. We don't have free access to that. The third would be the US reluctance to enter our civil nuclear deal with the laws that we have, and an insistence that these laws be diluted to reduce the liability that we have. So those are the three issues that I could have seen.
So none of these issues seems to have been, they may have been addressed, but there no resolution.
That wasn't the expectation.
It wasn't the expectation.
That wasn't the expectation.
Professor Mahapatra, you think that one of the things was that the recent vote against Israel in the Human Rights Commission, and also this stand in the WTO thing which happened in Geneva. All these issues which were lying there, and in the midst of that, this visit, do you think that we have taken anything forward?
I think we are missing out the main point.
Yes.
This is the fifth round of strategic dialogue.
Indo-US strategic
Last
dialogue.
4 rounds of strategic dialogue hardly hit the headlines or any kind of debate on
this
television.
Time also it has not hit the headlines.
But this time, at least, there are a lot of television debates going on right now, and the kind of questions you are raising, expectations of the United States, expectations of India, whether the expectations were fulfilled at all. In my assessment, the American goal of fifth round of strategic dialogue in Delhi had a different set of objectives altogether. The number one objective was, given the kind of bitterness in the relationship in last few months, and the list is really longer, I don't have to spell out every issue, this was the time where they thought the best way to begin is a high-level, cabinet-level engagement with India yet again. Second objective was, a new government has come to power with massive mandate from the people. For the first time, you have a non-Congress party singularly occupying so many seats in the Lok Sabha, and this government is going to go on for 5 years. Let us test the water. Although there was an NDA in the past, and the BJP was the head of that NDA coalition, and Bajpayee really improved relations with the USA, this is a different picture altogether.
Yes.
So, testing waters in India. And I think the third important goal was, given the changes in the world politics today, it is now no longer the Cold War days when you had watertight alliance system. Today you have willing coalition partners, and even NATO allies differ on very many issues and critical issues. Even US-Japan have a lot of problems. US and Canada have a lot of problems. So there is no expectation that US-India relationship, the strategic partnership, there was a time of honeymoon period, and now things are going wrong and let us do something about it. Nothing like that. Now there is a realization that many countries, even if they are friendly on very many issues, are going to differ on very many issues. That is why you are mentioning about Gaza. Sushma Swaraj made it very clear that we continue to support the Palestinian cause, but Israel is a good friend.
Israel is a good friend.
That is a good indication. Rather, I would come home, forget about Ukraine and the Middle East, and where we have a lot of differences with Americans. If you come closer home, India and the US began to differ on very many issues going on in Bangladesh, for instance, after election. There was a UNHCR vote on Sri Lanka, and where India and the US voted differently.
Right.
There is a more critical issue going on in Pakistan and Afghanistan, where the Americans have an exit plan. So, in fact, this is a strategic dialogue, not a crisis management effort.
Okay. Siddharth, as far as the strategic dialogue is concerned, you think there has been any progress in the did you see in what happened yesterday, the two leaders during their press conferences answering the question? Do you think there has been any forward movement as well as the strategic dialogue is concerned?
Based on information that's in the public domain, in terms of the press conference, the joint statement, whatever one has read in the papers, it doesn't appear as if there is any greater alignment between India and America on a whole bunch of strategic questions in the wider region. I think the one big issue that weighs heavily on India's mind is the evolving situation in Afghanistan, where Mr. Kerry tried very bravely to work out a compromise between the two presidential candidates. So there is a peace formula as such, but already at the implementation stage, this formula has run into great difficulty. And what India needs is for the US to continue to remain engaged at the political level to ensure that that a verdict emerges from the election which truly represents the interests and the preferences of the Afghan people, and that you don't have a winner-take-all situation which in a way would exacerbate tension. So I don't know to what extent India and the US or Madam Sushma Swaraj and Mr. Kerry spoke, to what extent did they discuss details about Afghanistan, but to my mind this is the single largest strategic headache that both countries have to confront.
Okay.
And related to this, of course, is the attitude of Pakistan. So I don't know, quite frankly, what progress was made on this front.
Mr. Kalha, you think any progress has been made on this front?
Yes. You see, what happens in such discussions is that most of the what they call progress, if there has been any progress, is kept between the two sides.
Right.
None of them wish to make it public simply because each has its own constituency to cater for. For example, if we were to show too much enthusiasm between India and United States on Afghanistan, or too much, synergy together, then that would upset Pakistan, in which case the United States has a problem. Now, therefore, even if progress is made, it is usually kept under wraps, and it is kept for the next round to see how the implementation process takes place. What you will see is, if there is any progress, it will be on the ground. You won't see public statements which are made. Now, similarly, on other issues as well, where the strategic interests of both India and the United States coincide, for example, say like on the Indian Ocean area or
Right.
the Indo-Pacific region area, you will see what they call progress, but you will see it on the ground. You won't see any public statements which are made. Now, for example, if I may remind you that India has agreed to trilateral naval exercises between India, US and Japan,
Right.
which the previous government had shied away from. But that is progress. But you will never see press statements to the fact that, because of what they call coming together of India, United States, this has happened. So it is for us to see and watch what happens on the ground.
Okay.
Similarly, as far as now Gaza is concerned, everybody knows that India has a position as far as the Arab world is concerned. India has a position as far as Palestine is concerned. And even when I was in government, we used to make public statements. But I think the Israelis, or perhaps even the other Western powers, would understand the situation, and they would, perhaps not pay too much attention to the kind of statements that were coming, because they don't indicate too much divergence. All that they indicate is that we have a position on Palestine, they have a position on Palestine, but that doesn't mean that we should go quarreling over it.
Okay.
They have their interests in the region, we have our interests in the region, and I think it's important that both countries should recognize that these interests are there and perhaps may not be compatible with each other.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that
Okay,
we
Mr. Kalha.
start quarreling over such positions.
Okay, Chidanand.
Yes.
Chidanand, one of the things which before Kerry was talking about, came to India, he made a speech there in the US. One of the things which the US expects India to do, or expects about India, is that, as far as China is concerned, US and India have similar concerns about China, and they would work together. You think that is one of the aims of this visit, and also as far as the strategic dialogue is concerned, as Siddharth and Mr. Kalha was pointing about the role of India in Afghanistan after US leaves Afghanistan?
Yeah, I mean, regarding China, definitely, the U.S. has, for several years now tried to, suggest that India should play a sort of stronger role. The whole idea of sort of co-opting India and projecting Indian interests in Asia Pacific is aimed at sort of countering China. They may not say so publicly, but the point is India is also not a sort of ready and willing partner. I think India has its own compulsions. China is a big neighbor. It's a huge trading partner, as large, if not larger, than the United States in some years. So it's not an easy equation to resolve. This is probably going to be a triangular relationship with moments of unease and moments of cooperation. At the end of the day, U.S. and China are also the world's largest trading blocs and trading partners. So there are no easy answers to this. But fundamentally, I think what we have to understand is that the U.S. and India are going to be long-term partners, regardless of all the unease and the moments of disagreement. There is no country on earth where India has 3 million people of fixed human assets, intellectual assets. Absolutely no country on earth. These are two countries which are, on two sides of the globe, 10,000 miles away, but they're joined at the hip in terms of this human interaction. And so this is always going to be a strong relationship with disagreements, quarrels, moments of unease. But at the end of the day, they have to learn to live each other, and that is what I think the U.S. And India are starting to learn.
Okay. Mr. Rajiv Kumar. Mr. Rajiv Kumar, the balancing act India will have to do between US and China. Because China, as Chidanand was pointing out, huge partner, we have a lot to look forward to. You think that this balancing act is you think India has been able to do and will be able to do in the future also? Without rubbing the US too much on the wrong side.
See, maybe I'll sound a little off track, but India's balancing act in this most important strategic trilateral equation can be played only if India gets its domestic act together.
Right.
See, because the fact is that there was a hope that the distance between US and China and between India and China would somehow remain the same. But what's happened now is that China has become closer to the US, but China has pulled away from India. Now, if that continues, then India will not be able to maintain this strategic autonomy that you need between these three countries. To do that, it has to get its domestic act together. Now, how it will do it is a matter of very nuanced and very in fact very astute diplomacy and politics, but on the basis of material, hard and comprehensive power that India has to do. And this is where I think, and I can be quite unequivocal about it, that at the moment where we are, and given what Mr. Rajghatta has just said about our own diaspora in India, in the US, India would do much better to rely more on the US to get its domestic strength up rather than at the moment rely on China. Because and just one other thing, which is that India has not been able to make use of its hugely gifted diaspora in the US to improve its relationship at the business to business level. The network that this Indian diaspora has created, we have not been able to use them, and I think it is time for a serious review of what our Ministry of the Pravasi Bharatiya does, because as far as I can make out, that particular asset has been grossly underutilized and would prove very effective in the India-US relations.
Professor Mahapatra, a very quick last point. The expectations that all the obstacles which were there, at least some of them will be removed in the coming months. You think Kerry has laid the foundation for that before Prime Minister visits the Indian Prime Minister visits the US?
I have no doubt in my mind that all these differences are going to be negotiated in next 2-3 months' time. This was a strategic dialogue about long-term cooperation between the two countries, and the differences that we spelled out just now will be in the process of negotiations between the two countries. And by the time our Prime Minister lands up in Washington, D.C., which he very happily agreed to go to Washington and engage President Obama, the big ticket items, quote unquote, not very big, but big ticket items, if any, are going to be announced in September and not now.
Okay. I think on that note, we need to end. That it's on this optimistic note that maybe some of the problems which were dogging the relations between India and US has been to some extent taken care of during the visit of especially the atmospherics between the two nations. Hopefully we'll see more progress when the Prime Minister of India visits the US in September. Thanks to all my guests, Siddharth, Varadarajan, Chidanand, Rajghatta, R.S. Kalha, Rajiv, Kumar and Chintamani Mahapatra. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in the big picture, same time on Monday. Meanwhile, have a great weekend.